Today, we're carrying on with the next video in our mini-series. Last time out, we covered the second thing that I would do if I was told that I couldn't get a mortgage. So today, surprisingly, we'll be covering the third. Stay on top of your housekeeping. Now, before we jump into today's video, you might be wondering, who am I to tell you anything about this? Well, my name's Josh. I'm the managing director of My Mortgage Finder. We're a mortgage brokerage that specialise in helping people with bad credit. We do around £10 million worth of bad credit mortgages every single year, and we're a company that employs over 30 people. Now, before we go on and talk about housekeeping, let's quickly recap on what we've covered in previous videos. So the first thing that I said that I would do if I was told I couldn't get a mortgage would be get a second or a third opinion. The second thing that I said I would do would be find out specifically why it was I couldn't get the mortgage or why I was told I couldn't get the mortgage, and then create a plan to fix it. And now the third thing that we're going to be discussing is stay on top of your housekeeping. So housekeeping, you're probably thinking at this stage, what is this thing called housekeeping that Josh keeps talking about? So when I'm talking about housekeeping in the mortgage perspective is all these little 1%ers and all the small things that you need to be doing and staying on top of. Generally speaking, quite simple things and things that people might think are common sense, but will really strengthen your chances in a mortgage application. And what we quite commonly see is some of these basic and fundamental things are very easy to get wrong. And in the past, we've told people to go away and fix some of the more severe problems. And you might have identified the problem, like we've told you to do in previous videos. You've created a plan and you've fixed the problem. But if your housekeeping hasn't been in check and you've got these small little things wrong, then it's potentially going to set you back months and even years. The first part of housekeeping that I'm going to talk about, which is arguably the most important point, is how much money that you have left over at the end of each month. For example, once you've paid all of your bills and all of your payments have gone out, do you still have money left in your account? Or do you actually have less than when you started? And one of the main things that the mortgage lenders are going to be looking at here is there enough money left over at the end of each month to support the new potential mortgage payment? Let me be very specific with this. Let's take an example here and say that you are currently living at home with your parents, and at the end of every month you spend just about all of your money and you maybe have between £50 and £100 left over. Well, the person who is deciding whether they're going to approve your mortgage will see they've got £50 to £100 left over, but if the new mortgage payment is going to be £800, they could make the point that there is just not the money within your bank statements to support that new mortgage payment. So I think the crucial thing that I would personally do here, so I can make sure that this part of my housekeeping is really tidy, is I would want to know what my potential mortgage repayment is going to be. And that's something that you would put together in the plan that we discussed in previous videos. Now, once you know what that potential new mortgage payment is going to be, what you need to try and do is have that amount of money left over in the bank account at the end of each month. That is going to demonstrate to the mortgage underwriter, the person who's deciding whether they're going to approve the mortgage, whether the mortgage payment is affordable within your current income or whether it isn't affordable. And if it is, and you're proving that money's in your bank account every single month, that's going to put you in a really strong position. So the next part of your housekeeping that we're going to talk about is your credit utilisation. What do I mean by credit utilisation? Well, what we mean by this is how much of your available credit are you using really at one time. So common examples here could be credit cards. This is a really big example, but also things like personal loans, overdrafts, store cards, anything that falls into this category. So when we talk about credit utilisation, in an ideal world, we would want this to be as low as possible. And that is because if you are utilising a lot of your available credit, then that could be a sign to a mortgage lender that you are potentially living beyond your means, because you're having to use credit to support your day-to-day expenses and lifestyle. So what I would personally consider doing, ultimately this is your decision, but if you have credit cards or store cards that you do decide to put a certain amount of money on, what a good habit that some people do is they put a fixed amount on every single month, maybe 50 to 60% of what the credit limit is. So if the credit card is £2,000 credit limit, they might put £1,000 on. And then if you can do so, set up a direct debit so you don't forget and just pay it off in full every single month. And what that's going to do is that's going to demonstrate to any potential lender that you can have credit, because that's what a mortgage is, but then you can utilize it and pay it off in full every single month and use it exactly how it's designed to be used. And just the final thing that I'll say on this, we haven't discussed things like personal loans and hire purchase agreements, which are absolutely fine to run alongside a mortgage, but just be mindful of it, how much you're borrowing and how many personal loans you're taking out and what your potential car payment is in reflection to the amount that you're earning. Because ultimately, the more that you're borrowing is potentially going to impact the amount that you could borrow from a mortgage lender. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to housekeeping is gambling. And this is a big problem for some people, and it's not a problem at all for others, but something that we need to cover nonetheless. So the big things that can cause a problem here is when it looks like a pattern and very consistent gambling. For example, we've seen in applications before, somebody might be betting on the bingo daily, or they might be putting bets on the horses every other day. And betting like this, because it's so consistent and so regular, a lot of mortgage lenders just really don't like it. And that can potentially cause them to decline the case in total, or it can actually cause them to limit the affordability that they're prepared to lend. The things that are going to be less of a problem will be things such as the odd bet on a football accumulator here and there, maybe for a few pounds, or, you know, potentially the lottery. These aren't going to be considered to be a big problem, but if you are concerned that you're gambling a lot and you are spending quite a lot on gambling, then that's probably a good indication that it's something that you need to be very mindful of. In an ideal world, in the run-up to a mortgage application, probably the simplest thing not to do, or the simplest thing to do, should I say, would just be to refrain from gambling, ultimately, if you can. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to housekeeping is cash transactions. And the reason that cash transactions can potentially be a little bit of a red flag for mortgage lenders is they just don't know where the money is going or where it's coming from. So again, let me give you a specific example. If you are just putting £500 into your bank account in cash every single month, you might tell the mortgage lender that this is where it's coming from, and that might be true, but it's very hard for you to evidence that, which then means it's very hard for the lender to get comfortable with it. Equally, if you are taking £500 out of your bank account every single month, that's going to do two things. The mortgage lender's going to think, do we need to be deducting this £500 off the amount that you can borrow? So that then potentially becomes an affordability issue. But they also would be a little bit concerned about where it's going as well. And given it's very hard to evidence where the money is going if you pull it out in cash, that causes a big problem in itself. So what I would typically do if this does apply to you and you're thinking, I am putting a lot of money into the bank in cash, or I'm taking a lot of money out of the bank in cash, well, is there a way that you could maybe just do a bank transfer or spend it on your card and just change that habit a little bit, which is going to be a lot easier for the mortgage lender to track and ultimately for you to evidence either where that's going or where it's coming from. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Now, if that's not possible for some reason, then what I would try your best to do is whatever you're spending the cash on or wherever it's coming from, see if you can get a receipt, you know, some form of written receipt or an email just to evidence and back up where that money is either coming from or going to. And that would definitely help when it comes to a mortgage application. But the best thing to do would be, if you just don't have to do it, try and avoid it where possible. And this ties on nicely to my next point when it comes to housekeeping, which is, where is your deposit coming from? And it's really important that you can evidence and show the mortgage lender where your mortgage deposit has been built up from and where that's come from. And the reasons for that is, if you come to apply for a mortgage and the cash that you're using has just arrived in your bank account for £15,000 the day you apply for a mortgage, that is going to be a huge red flag for the lender, and it's really going to go under the microscope. They are going to want to know exactly where that money's come from, and potentially if you've just put £15,000 in cash in the bank the day before, that's going to be very hard for you to evidence as well. So what I would try and do, if you could, is display your deposit being built up over a period of time. So if it's just coming from your monthly savings, then just, this should be a gradual build up over the space of a year or 2 years, and that's going to be very easy for a mortgage lender to get involved with. Equally, if this has been a gifted deposit, and this is maybe coming from a family member or potentially a close friend, try and get a bank transfer so you can just show the track record exactly of where that deposit's come from. If they were to give you it in cash and then you were to put it into your bank in cash, there might be ways around it, but again, it's going to cause scrutiny, which is ultimately something that you don't want when it comes to a mortgage application. Okay, so the last point we're going to talk about when it comes to housekeeping is multiple transactions to one person or a group of people. So if you're transferring money to one person every single month, then it's lots of money or lots of small amounts of money, the mortgage lender is going to ask questions. They're going to want to know what the relationship is between you. They're going to want to know why the money's going to them. They're going to want to know if you owe them money. If you owe them money, they're potentially going to then consider that as maybe a loan that they need to factor into affordability, which then can impact the amount that you borrow. And ultimately, what we see in most cases is this is normally a very innocent thing and it can be explained. But the point I'm trying to make here is the whole reason that we are talking to you today about housekeeping is to try and make your mortgage application as smooth as possible and give you the best chance when it comes to it. So if you can potentially just reduce something like this and then reduce the amount of questions that you get asked within a mortgage application, it's just going to help things go smoother. And the last thing I'll say on this is, if there are lots of transactions going back and forth from a bank account and it's something you can't stop, then I would just try and build some documentary evidence as to why those transactions are going to that person and then back to you. It might be an email or something like that. Anything really just to help build the case will ultimately provide a little bit of benefit and weight to what you're saying. So to summarize and recap on what we've discussed in the previous 2 videos and today's video so far, the first thing that we need to do is, if we get told that we cannot get a mortgage, is we're going to get a second and we're going to get a third opinion. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to find out very specifically why it was that we were told that we couldn't get a mortgage. And then we're going to create that plan to fix it. And then the final thing that we're going to do is what we've covered in today's video, which is we've done the other 2 things. Let's not forget about the housekeeping. It's absolutely crucial that you stay on top of your housekeeping. And I think if you can do those 3 things together and you can be very, very consistent with it, you will find that with time and patience and the right plan, you will be able to become a homeowner within the timeframes that you hope. So I hope you found today's video helpful. If you do have any questions, or if you do need any more information on potentially building a plan and staying on top of your housekeeping, that is something that we can help with. So feel free to drop a comment below, or you can send us an email using the email address that is in the description below as well. So thanks for watching. Please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications for more tips on bad credit and all things bad credit mortgage related, and we will see you in the next video.